Welcome to ZKast, everyone. I'm ZS Caravallo from ZK Research, and I'm here with the esteemed Bob Laliberte from Enterprise Strategy Group, who I consider one of the best networking analysts. Bob, say hi.
Hi, ZS. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Now, we had some big news this week, right? We had HPE announced that they're going to be picking up Juniper Networks for the grand total of $14 billion, or about $40 a share. There's a lot of opinions thrown out there about the price and the way they're funding it, but the deal has happened. So let's talk about what that means now. Now, the first thing I want to ask you is, when I read a lot of the media coverage, which includes my own SiliconANGLE post, there was a lot of focus on the overlap of products, right? Both are both known as really good wireless LAN companies. In fact, HPE Networking, which is largely driven by Aruba Management, was founded as a Wi-Fi company. And then even Juniper Networking, which is now, everybody jokes that they've been mystified, that started as a Wi-Fi company. And so that's really the center of attention. But I'm going to bring a chart up here on the screen. And if you look at this chart, Bob, from a product perspective, there appears to be a lot more complementary areas than first people probably realize. So I'm asking you, is this acquisition complementary, or is there a lot of product overlap?
Yeah, I think that the short answer is it's both. That there are a lot of areas where they complement each other, right? Certainly, like right off the top of your head, things like enterprise data center networking, right? Some of the WAN routers and things like that into telco and service providers. Those things are clearly areas where they're complementary. Certainly the AI piece could be somewhat, but the extensible AI platform you might also consider to be very complementary. And I think one of the big reasons why they bought them, in addition to what you're seeing here. But yeah, I think a lot of people, they think Aruba and, wired and wireless campus networks, and they think Juniper and what's going on there. And so they're more recent into you're fully on board into the Wi-Fi, right? Having their own Wi-Fi acquisition through Mist in 2019. But yeah, there's clearly opportunities for this to be complementary and for it to grow. There's clearly areas of overlap that will need to be rationalized over time.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point in itself. I just got a call with Aruba leadership, and I asked them about rationalization, and the expression Phil Mottry used was it would be commercial suicide. And so if your customers watching this of either company, he used that expression to talk about any kind of short-term plans to end the life any products. And in fact, if you look at HPE historically, when they end the life of product, they typically give customers about a 5-year heads up on it, right? So I don't think any customer is going to be caught with their proverbial network pants down here. As far as product transitions go, I did push and ask them, would there be product rationalization down the road? And they didn't really seem to indicate that was coming anytime soon, and it's their intention to keep both product lines going. So I ask you, is that the right thing to do? Or obviously it's a very expensive way to run a business, although they did say it's not expensive as you think, having multiple product lines versus two. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's absolutely the right thing to do for the customer, right? If you and they're both companies have really passionate customers, right? The airheads around Aruba are extremely passionate about their products and their services. And I know in talking to a lot of the Juniper customers, they feel the same way. Like, hey, we've made this decision. We're really passionate about this. So by telling the customers, by making a statement that, hey, look, we're not abandoning either one of you, that we're going to make sure it's supported for, potentially, like I said, 5-6 years, whatever that is, potentially a generational type of shift. That also gives them time. I think on the call yesterday, Rami mentioned many times that they wanted to be very thoughtful about that rationalization process. So do I think there will be some rationalization and consolidation over time? Most likely. But the fact that they're giving ample time for customers to adjust, to understand, to get educated on what that roadmap is, to give them time to make that shift, I think that's a really smart business move in support of their customers and maintaining that loyalty that they've built over the years.
Yeah, and I think I'm not surprised. I've had the same feedback from the customers as well. And if you think of these two companies, they're the epitome of the ABC market, right? The anything but Cisco.
Yeah.
So Cisco in networking is always the easy decision. If you're using HPE networking or Juniper, you have gone through a long, extensive process of picking something that's not the market leader. So that means the person making the decision is sticking their neck out and saying, I'm going to buck the trend and I'm going to go this way because we believe they're the best. Right. So from that standpoint, the customer base almost has to be delighted with what they're doing because they wouldn't have made the decision otherwise, right?
Correct, absolutely. And I think,
Yeah.
in a lot of it, in talking to the Juniper customers of late, it's been that Mist product, that AI native platform that's really turned for them and helped them make that decision, make it easier for them to make that shift to a Juniper. So I think if we think about some of the underlying factors for buying and making this acquisition, that AI platform and potentially being able to integrate that over as well to the Aruba side, could
Yeah.
provide a significant value.
So let's talk about that. I've heard people say that they clearly didn't spend $14 billion just for Mist, but I mean, Mist is largely known as the best AI ops networking platform out there, right? So what do you see as the potential for Mist? You eventually see Mist capability being brought to Central. One of the things I theorized is, can you use it in the broader HPE portfolio? What's the end game for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it was interesting. Even if you go back and think about when Juniper first bought Mist, a lot of people were questioning that purchase price, right, and that level of investment for the company at the
Yeah.
stage it was at. But I view that as it was really a strategic acquisition, right? They picked up not only that AI platform, but also the talent behind it as well, right? As we all know, resources are hard to find, so getting that talent on board is really important. And so the cool part of what I've seen them be able to do with that platform is their ability to execute and extend its capabilities across additional domains. So they came in as Wi-Fi, they quickly extended to the wired switches after they bought a company. And this is really, I guess, some of the true test of how extensible a product is. It wasn't like another Juniper product. It was something they bought off the street, right? The 128 technologies, and within like
Yeah,
six
yeah.
months or so, they were able to incorporate that. So their ability to demonstrate the extensibility of that product, I think, gives me hope that as they become part of the HPE organization, that it's not only used for the networking space, and there's still room for them to extend in the networking space into the data center and routers and so forth, but also be able to extend that platform to the servers and storage potentially as well.
Yeah. The one piece of the acquisition, Bob, and you and I have talked about this offline a lot, that didn't really get much attention at all, was Juniper's security portfolio. Now, I do think the Juniper security portfolio, as far as like relative place in the industry, isn't what it once was when they had bought NetScreen, right? Like Palos and Fortinet have certainly taken off, but it's still a strong security portfolio led by their firewall.
Yep.
And HPE, while they have a SASE offering, to support their, or an SSE offering to support their SD-WAN,
Yep.
isn't really known as a security company. And so there's a lot of chatter in the industry about the convergence of networking and security, although I haven't really seen that in large enterprise yet, right? But how important do you think that part of the business is to the success of this?
Yeah, I think Juniper's always talked about secure connectivity, and that's a word that we hear often, right? So that connectivity is hand in hand with security. I think where we've seen the most convergence is probably in the cloud, where people have created those cloud centers of excellence, and
Yeah.
they're bringing not only the network and security teams, but also, right, everyone from developers and application, etc. But I think what we're going to see here. It's interesting because HPE had just picked up Axis, right, which is one of those really cloud native, etc., right, modern security applications for SaaS. And I think Juniper's established a pretty good reputation of, like you said, that while their business wasn't standalone security, they built a pretty good better together with Juniper networking. So there's a lot of that security attached into the Juniper customers. So I guess the big question is going to be about how do they, again, this goes to a roadmap question, how well can they integrate that technology? I would honestly see some of the early ones be maybe looking at how the white sand stuff and the access control might blend with what Aruba has with ClearPass and so forth and things like that, and maybe how that ties into access as well. You know, maybe centered around some type of a ZTNA initiative or something.
Yeah, actually, I hadn't considered the white sand piece of it. But you're right. That actually might be the easiest point of integration. So, yeah. Well, I think from that standpoint, it was a bit of an underappreciated aspect of the acquisition. The other part they talked about a lot, actually, in the investor call, and not as much in the in industry analyst call, was the ASICs. I'm surprised they actually got down to that level. But I've always believed that it's funny, Bob, in our industry, we swing pendulums like one or the other, and we talk about everything being done in software and everything, but you can't do everything in software, you can't do everything in silicon, you can't do everything in hardware, but you got to do the right processing in the right places. And so the silicon, particularly on the Juniper side, is like world class, right? So I do think that that's a part of the business that Juniper itself doesn't really talk a lot about. And your thoughts on the impact that silicon has, and that might
Yeah.
be the first point of integration.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, that's another really good point. I mean, I guess it all that comes down to, right, the hard part is with silicon is half the time it's like you said, we're talking about we need to have dedicated proprietary silicon in order to achieve the accomplishments we want. And then on the other side, you talk to having everything being open and using just the commercially available silicon that's coming out. So I think, like you said, it's the important part is to find the right place to deploy it where it provides a significant competitive differentiation. And I think Juniper's really focused on that and is able to leverage it. So, like you said, that might be a really interesting first point, and that tends to get you to that that point of potentially universal hardware across the Aruba and Juniper product lines.
Okay. Now, the last piece of this I want to talk about is just the overall impact to HPE. Right? One of the things they went through on both calls was the fact that post acquisition, I believe the numbers were 31% of HPE revenue would now be networking, which can correct me if I'm wrong, which would actually make it the largest business unit inside HPE, and it would also be 56% of operating margin, right? So, which given the given the relative gross margins of networking versus compute, I'm not surprised it contributes that much. But I think historically, if you were to ask people that were in the know or even casual, tech followers who HPE is, they would say they're a compute company, right? Now that networking is the biggest component, are we seeing the transition of HPE from being compute first to networking first?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That was something that I was struck by when Antonio said it. We're looking to become HPE, the networking company. It
Yeah.
certainly aligns with what we're seeing overall in just modern IT, right? Applications are being distributed across private data centers, multiple public clouds, edge locations. And so this distributed nature of the modern environment places a lot more reliance on the network and the connectivity to ensure everything works. So when this maybe comes down to is the modern IT infrastructure becoming, right? The network is the computer type of thing. How important will the network be moving forward in all these highly distributed environments? And so being able to certainly look at it from that TAM perspective, right? As more and more organizations need to leverage the network to connect all their applications to all their users, to all their customers, what does this represent as an opportunity to expand? And not only just from some other TAM type related activities as well, just thinking about networking for AI, right? Providing all those back end infrastructure for the AI is just another great expansion point from a TAM perspective.
Yeah, I suppose, and you're right. I was surprised when Antonio said that as well. It was, and then I was thinking, well, does he mean it? Because a lot of the employees in HPE are still compute first, or is this just lip service? And I suppose if we look out ahead, we'll know if he meant it when the Green Lake offerings start leading with networking, right? And if they start, instead of using network to support the compute, it's the other way around, right? Where Rami Rahim, who is going to be leading Aruba networking or Aruba networking, HPE networking, who I think is an excellent leader, by the way. I'm glad they actually did that model. But if he has more influence over how the compute part of the business should run in order to support networking. And so what are some of the keys you see to actually understanding whether they're not just talking the talk, but actually walking the walk?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's going to be, this is unfortunately so much of this is we're going to have to wait and see. But
Yeah.
clearly, it's going to be a transformation in just the go to market, right? The sales, the channel partners that they use, everyone becoming much more network centric and driving and leading with the network first and connecting all that. And that, as you know, is a significant transition. So you talk about keeping both the network companies around for 5 or 6 years. The question is, how long does it take to transform these companies? And we've seen history has shown us some of this, right? Where people have gone from selling boxes to selling services or selling solutions.
Yeah.
And it requires a bit of an uplift to the sales teams, right? Or at least a change in the skill sets of the sales team. So that is one big, I think that'll probably be one of the interesting things. I actually got a question today earlier about, hey, what does this mean for the channels and what channel partners are they going to go through? And
Yeah.
so I think that's part and parcel of the answer to this question is that, hey, look, if we're making a significant transition and we're recognizing, as we go from the edge to the cloud type of thing, that the network is playing a much more significant role and we want to lead with networking, then we need to, shift a lot of our go to market, a lot of our campaign strategy, how we're educating our sales teams and educating the customers as well on, excuse me, on the importance of a solid, secure network connectivity.
Yeah, you bring up an excellent point that I hadn't considered. If you consider some of the big SIs and the global systems integrators, they will have HP Compute and Cisco networking in their portfolio. If now HPE does start making a bigger transition in networking, they would ideally like that SI to lead with their networking, not Cisco networking, right? And that could cause some interesting conflicts in the channel. So that's going to be an interesting point to watch.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Bob. Any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, just off the top of my head, like I said, it's really, it's great to see this blockbuster deal at the start of the year. Obviously creates a ton of buzz,
Yeah.
gives everyone something to talk about. But as we all know, that really the proof is going to be in the pudding. So the good part is everyone
Yeah.
has a lot of time to digest it and think about it, and then we get to see, hopefully by next year this time, what the steps they're actually taking.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be, I know it's pending regulatory approval and things like that. I don't think there's really any question that'll go through that. I mean, it's not like there's a monopoly situation here. I mean, if it was Cisco buying them, it might, but they're still both relative. And actually, let me ask you that one of the points they brought up though was it does create a bigger HP networking business, given the relative size of Cisco's networking business compared to everybody else in the industry. Um, can this be a needle mover, or is it just there's still going to be not people won't consider HPE network, they'll be the lead AVC company, but they're just a bit bigger one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a huge gap between Cisco and everyone else. And so there's a
Yeah.
lot of work to get there. So, right. But maybe it's, like the Avis car company, right? Hey, we're number two, so we try harder. And they're
Yeah.
going to pick up ground. So I think that remains to be, obviously that's going to be, remains to be seen, but it certainly gives them more ammunition and some of the AI capabilities to really go after and target Cisco.
Yeah, and I do think for the first time ever, they can, if you do have a loyal customer, you can actually bring the whole portfolio in, right? I know there's a lot of customers that, I know one of the, a pretty large enterprise where they're really not a big Cisco fan, but they use Cisco routers because there really haven't been good alternatives. But now HPE can bring the whole portfolio in, right? So there is a lot of value in that. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
all right, Bob. Well, thanks for joining me on this. And I guess it is a good way to start the year. And so who knows what happens next. So until we speak again, on behalf of Bob Laliberte, I'm Zeus Caravella from ZK Research saying thanks for watching. that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time on the ZKast. Thanks, Bob.